So I'd like to welcome all of you to this webinar co-organized by the Islamic Development Bank, the South Centre and the UNOSSC for Southside Cooperation on the following topic: South-South and triangular cooperation in the context of the COVID-19, lessons learned, experiences, and insight for the future of development cooperation. So my name is Tariq Ziaren. I am a Deputy Director for Policy and Strategic Partnership at the UN Office for South-South Cooperation, and I will be guiding you through the program of this webinar. And I will also moderate one of the sessions of the event. So this webinar is really very timely because it takes place as we celebrate the UN Day for South-South Cooperation for the commemoration of the BAPA, the Buenos Aires Plan of Action adopted by the UN in 1978. It brings together different stakeholders, national, regional, and international, to share experiences in the response to COVID pandemic and to discuss lessons learned. But most importantly, this webinar is directed toward the future because participants will have a chance to share ideas and insight on how we can make international cooperation, multilateralism, and South-South and triangular cooperation more effective in responding to the global challenges and crises in a coordinated manner. COVID-19 crisis demonstrated that we are living in an interdependent world and that we are before the imperative to pull our effort in order to achieve common goals in fighting this pandemic and responding to its economic and social consequences, and most importantly, to achieve the SDGs. And this is the subject and the objective of course, of the decade of action of the UN and the international community. After these few words, I'd like to present to you the program of our event of today. So after the opening remarks by the three co-organizers of this event, the Islamic Development Bank, South Centre and UNOSSC South-South Cooperation, we'll have the first discussion of the webinar dedicated to challenges, experiences, and lessons learned from national and regional cooperation agencies, institutions in the context of COVID-19 pandemic. It will be moderated by my friend, Professor Yufren Lee, Senior Advisor, South-South Cooperation and Development Finance at the South Centre. After that, we'll move to the second session of the event dedicated to the following topic: how should South-South and triangular cooperation and development cooperation evolve and be enhanced in light of the current pandemic in the decade of action? And I will be moderating this session. So after these two sessions, we'll have interaction. The panelists will have a chance to interact with the audience, with the participant, and I encourage the participant to share the comment and also their question through the chat box. And then at the end, we will have closing remarks by the UNOSSC South-South Cooperation and the Islamic Development Bank. So let me now move on to the opening session of this webinar. We'll have three speakers: Mr. Jorge Shediek, UNOSSC Director and the Overview of the Secretary General on South-South Cooperation. And then we'll have His Excellency Mr. Mansour Mukhtar, Vice President, Country Program, the Islamic Development Bank. And then last but not least, Dr. Carlos Correa, Executive Director of the South Centre. So without further ado, I'd like to give the floor to Mr. Shediek for some welcoming remarks. Mr. Shediek, please, you have the floor.
Thank you, Tariq. Good morning from New York. Good afternoon, good evening to all of you in different time zones. As Tariq mentioned, this is a very timely event. Timely in the sense that we have agreed in Buenos Aires in 2019 on the importance of South-South and triangular cooperation as a tool to achieve the 2030 agenda. And we are in the middle of a revolution in South-South cooperation in terms of its massive expansion and also the impact it is having, because many more actors are engaging from the national level, from the local level, and also more international organizations are increasingly becoming committed to the practice of South-South and triangular cooperation, including the UN, including the excellent work that the Islamic Development Bank does with the reverse linkage initiative, and nothing to say about the extraordinary contributions that the South Centre makes. So we had South-South cooperation recognized as a key element of the global cooperation architecture. And in the middle of these efforts we were making globally to achieve the 2030 goals, were hit by the pandemic. The pandemic changed the parameters of international relations, of local and domestic economic relations. Nothing to say about the sanitary conditions and the realities that it has changed. And it is very relevant for us to reflect, and I really salute the organization of this event, and I want to thank Tariq for being the point person in our office for this initiative, on how South-South cooperation has been affected by the pandemic, and how it can become a tool to respond to the pandemic and also to the effect of the post-pandemic in the development process. So the good news is South-South cooperation has continued during the pandemic. There are many initiatives that many countries, some of them devoted new resources to collaborate with other countries of the South. Some of them redirected resources that were for normal development processes and instead were repurposed to help respond to the pandemic. And also some international organizations, and in this I want to praise the Islamic Development Bank and others, also created new facilities or repurposed funds for assistance in the fight against the pandemic. So that's the good news in the sense that South-South cooperation has responded, and the panels will address that. So I will not go into detail in that situation, because we're going to see concrete examples on how that is working. At the same time, the pandemic is affecting the global development landscape, as we mentioned before. So even though South-South cooperation is rising to the occasion, the development process will be seriously damaged. For the first time since 1990, the Human Development Index at the global level will be lower than the year before. And all the trends, many of which were positive towards the achievement of the 2030 goals, have been severely affected by the economic fallout of the crisis and also the social consequences of the COVID crisis. So therefore, in spite of South-South cooperation rising to the occasion, the challenge of achieving the global goals and building a better world, a more fair, a more just world, is becoming more complicated by the effects of the pandemic. So what do we need to do from the perspective of South-South and triangular cooperation to respond to this reality? Number one is we need to make a strong case that South-South cooperation is making a difference. That's why events like this are so important, to showcase from countries and organizations, from Morocco to the state of Palestine to Chile to Turkey, are showing what they are doing and what they can do. And I really want to praise those particularly 4 countries that will be one of the panels. And continue to build the constituency for South-South cooperation. Because one of the problems we confront in this pandemic, most of the domestic budgets of the countries have been severely stressed by the costs that the pandemic is imposing, both in economic and social terms. So therefore, it is difficult to mobilize a spirit of solidarity with other countries when the resources are very scarce and very difficult to utilize. So we need to, in addition to making the moral argument, we have to make also an argument that South-South cooperation is effective, is working, is generating results that are beneficial to the other countries with which we partner and also at the global level. So that is a very important element, to produce evidence-based material that showcases the importance of South-South cooperation. In that context, our office, as you know, has Galaxy, the platform where we have already 300 good practices from the South that have been shared in the context of South-South and triangular cooperation, and invite you to utilize that database and also to feed that and also utilize it as a partnering platform. I also invite you to contribute with increasing experiences so we can show that South-South cooperation is making a difference, because we need to make the case. And then we'll have a very big challenge after the pandemic with the global architecture. We were aware before the pandemic, the whole globalized architecture was under enormous stress. In addition to the traditional injustice relative to the South of many of the institutions of global governance, there has been a tendency from many of the countries that were the advocates of that global governance to retreat and eliminate some of the possibilities and opportunities that were given to countries from the South. This will probably be exacerbated after the crisis. So one of the big challenges for South-South cooperation after the crisis is, in addition to working and systematizing our experiences on how to fight the pandemic, is how to work together in the refinement of the global architecture. I remember some weeks ago we were working on this upcoming South Summit. And one of the issues we were reviewing is, okay, how can the South bring new ideas in terms of global financial architecture, trade, investment, intellectual property, and other matters. And I think the challenge will become even bigger then. And in that context, I think we all from the South put a lot of hope in the contributions that Carlos and his team in the South Centre can make in helping the South develop new intellectual and political positions to help redesign that global architecture post-pandemic. If we want to achieve the 2030 goals and we want to have it in a fair way that will help the poorest of our people. So I really look forward to hearing the results of this event, which is, I think, singularly important. And from UNOSSC, we confirm our strong commitment to building the partnership with ISDB and South Centre that sponsors this event, and with all of you that are very strong actors in South-South and triangular cooperation. It's funny I make that commitment on behalf of UNOSSC because tomorrow is my last day as director of the office, because I'm leaving, although I will not leave the fight for South-South cooperation or for this cause, as I think you can detect, I believe in this, and I believe we can make a difference. So let's continue the fight, and it will be a real fight, because we'll have to fight a lot of structural issues, we'll have to fight a lot of institutional limitations, we'll have to fight a lot of resource scarcities, but if we all do it together, the South working in partnership, also supported by others through triangular cooperation, can help fight the pandemic and build a better world. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Jorge, for this insight and thought about the crisis, the pandemic, its impact on the economies and countries of the South, but most importantly for highlighting the key role of South-South cooperation in bringing it back better, and also for finding solutions to the world development and economic problems. And as you mentioned and emphasized, we will continue the fight. There is no doubt the fight will continue. Thank you very much for this opening remarks. So now I have the pleasure to give the floor to His Excellency Mr. Mansour Mukhtar, Vice President of Country Programs of the Islamic Development Bank. Mr. Mukhtar, please, you have the floor.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Let me also join you in thanking my colleague, Mr. Jorge Sidir, for the concise but profound and illuminating presentation, which really provides a useful context for our discussion. And I want to seize the opportunity also to thank you for all your support in forging greater links and collaboration with the Islamic Development Bank. I'm honored to be on this platform with you, although I understand you'll be leaving shortly, but I still am delighted to hear that you remain active, remain engaged in the struggle for promoting South-South cooperation. I also want to thank thank the UN Office for South-South Cooperation and the South Centre for co-organizing this event with us, the Islamic Development Bank. Distinguished speakers, ladies and gentlemen, on behalf of the Islamic Development Bank, I would like to welcome you all to this virtual meeting on South-South and triangular cooperation in the context of COVID-19. It comes, as it was indicated, on the heels, it's very timely and relevant, coming as it were on the heels of the celebration and commemoration of UN South-South Cooperation Day. And the theme of the event is also very topical as the entire world continues to grapple with the challenges posed by COVID-19 pandemic, bringing forth the importance of global cooperation in terms never experienced before. It goes without saying that we are all living through a unique and immensely difficult period ushered in by COVID-19 pandemic. Several countries in the South are facing rising socioeconomic challenges, deepening poverty and loss of lives in an unprecedented scale. In some cases, countries that made major strides in addressing poverty in the context of Agenda 2030 for Sustainable Development are losing the gains they have made. They are losing grounds, and this risks plunging hundreds of millions back into poverty. For many countries, recovering from the impact of this crisis could take years, if not decades. And the crisis has further exacerbated the vulnerabilities in economies and health systems of countries. It has also made visible, indeed, glaringly visible, the inequalities that exist across countries. And it is, of course, important to acknowledge that the pandemic poses major challenges to developed countries of the North as well. However, these countries are faring better in dealing with the negative impact of the crisis and in protecting their vulnerable population due to their better economic standing. However, their recovery efforts are also strongly pinned on the ability of the global South to contain the pandemic, which cannot be achieved without effective global cooperation. It is in this context that we are witnessing great examples of solidarity and cooperation among countries, both through South-South cooperation and triangular cooperation mechanisms. During this pandemic, we have observed increased sharing of experiences and knowledge, increases in aid flows, and increased collaboration in research efforts. These are all positive developments that need to be encouraged and strengthened. The Islamic Development Bank, as a South-South development finance institution, has been providing support to its member countries during this challenging period. The bank approved a $2.3 billion strategic preparedness and response package to tackle the impact of COVID on its member countries. Our program takes a holistic three-track approach, which we call 3 Rs: response, restore, and restart. The 3 tracks are designed to assist member countries' efforts in preventing, containing, mitigating, and recovering from the impact of the COVID-19 pandemic by supporting health, economic, and social sector interventions. Currently, several projects and technical assistance operations have been approved and are under implementation. And beyond facilitating flow of development financing across its member countries, the bank is also helping facilitate exchange of know-how and expertise, primarily through its reverse linkage modality. We have established e-learning platforms and conducted several webinars with many technical partners during this period to share knowledge on best practices from successful national response experiences and to build capacity of medical and emergency response personnel. Capacity development and training arrangements have also been supported among national labs and clinics in many member countries spanning across Africa and Asia. In addition, the bank has realigned its member country partnership strategy to support its member countries in building back more resilient, competitive, digital, and equitable economies and societies. South-South and triangular cooperation is one of the cornerstones of these strategies. Ladies and gentlemen, even prior to the outbreak of the pandemic, South-South and triangular cooperation were beginning to constitute indispensable approaches in shoring up development cooperation and to help achieve the Sustainable Development Goals. Last year's Papa Plus 40 conference in Buenos Aires provided a platform to take stock of what has been achieved through South-South and triangular cooperation in the past few decades. And the outcome document provided the direction for more concrete actions to be taken to strengthen them. Under the current circumstances, these development approaches have become even more relevant, more pertinent, and vital in solving our collective challenges. However, the post-COVID-19 era would also necessitate some changes in the manner in which South-South and triangular cooperation is used as a development tool in a new global context. The last few months have provided an excellent learning opportunity for us to draw lessons and build a more effective SSTrC ecosystem. Undoubtedly, the lessons learned from this brief but intense timeline and the experiences we've all gained institutionally can help formulate new insights which would enhance South-South and triangular cooperation further in post-COVID-19 era. Today's webinar provides a useful platform for embarking on this fruitful journey. It provides us with the opportunity to reflect on key lessons we've gained during this period and the implications it has on enhancing South-South and triangular cooperation in post-COVID world. We are very delighted to be associated with this initiative, and I trust the deliberations of diverse speakers from various technical cooperations and development institutions across different geographical boundaries will be extremely useful to this end. With these remarks, I wish our distinguished participants productive and enriching deliberations. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mukhtar, for this opening remarks. And I'd like to commend the Islamic Development Bank for all the effort that you are undertaking in order to support countries of the South to fight this pandemic and to mitigate its economic and social impact. And also for promoting South-South cooperation in a very innovative way through the reverse linkage mechanism, and also for putting an important element, conceptual element, which is the ecosystem for South-South cooperation that has become mainstream in the discourse and narrative about South-South triangular cooperation. We have established a very strong partnership with you, with the bank, and would like and we look forward for strengthening this partnership even further in the future. Thank you very much. Now I have the pleasure to give the floor to Dr. Carlos Correa. Please, Carlos, please, you have the floor.
Well, thank you very much, Tarek. Welcome again to all participants, and in particular, thank you very much to all the speakers for this seminar, for this webinar. The South Center is very proud of this, the organization of this event, and also is very proud and very satisfied with the collaboration we have had over the years with the UN Office on South-South Cooperation and with the Islamic Development Bank. So it has been very productive collaboration. We hope this will continue, in particular working on the concept of national ecosystem that was developed by the Islamic Development Bank and then redesigned or worked on by the South Centre team. So we are very happy that this collaboration is taking place. Let me just provide a very short argument about the current context for South-South cooperation. What I see now is a major contradiction. I think some of this has already been indicated by Jorge Chediek, but I see a major contradiction. On the one hand, the word cooperation is very strongly back in the international discourse. If you look, for instance, at the two resolutions adopted by the UN General Assembly earlier this year on COVID-19, cooperation is at the center, cooperation and solidarity. On 11 September, a new resolution was adopted, so-called Omnibus Resolution, where you can read that there is a call for an intensified international cooperation and solidarity to contain, mitigate, and overcome the pandemic and its consequences through responses that are people-centered and gender-responsive with full respect for human rights. So cooperation now is recognized as a main tool in order to address this global pandemic. As it was mentioned, there are not only health consequences, but very serious social and economic consequences. So cooperation is at the very center. And it's also very encouraging to hear from Mr. Muta that he has seen South-South cooperation and South and triangular cooperation to increase during this period. I'm sure we are going to talk about some examples in the following session, but this is encouraging. So cooperation and solidarity have come back very strongly into the international discourse. So this is very promising. But at the same time, there are contradictory trends which deny the role of cooperation, or which may undermine what cooperation can actually does for the recovery, can actually does for achievement of the SDGs. One of these events, one of these actions, which is very well known to all of you, is the withdrawal from the United States from the World Health Organization. So this is a very, very bad sign, because the World Health Organization is called to play a very important role in the area of global health. This organization should be strengthened, the capacity to operate should be enhanced and empowered in order to address these and other situations. And this is, of course, part of the cooperation that all countries may be engaged in, including countries from the South and the triangular cooperation. So this is a very negative sign in a situation in which cooperation looked as being back in the international discourse very strongly. A second negative trend is the fact that some countries are now looking at other countries as competitors rather than as partners. So there is a re-emergency or emergency of what some call techno-nationalism, the fact that there is competition to dominate in some areas, the fact that cooperation is seen as a mistake because you should not help others to grow, you should not help others to improve, you should just stop others from doing that. One expression of this is the so-called vaccine nationalism also, in which we see a number of countries which are making advanced purchases of vaccines in quantities that will mean that when a vaccine is finally ready for distribution, developing countries may not be able to get it, because these advanced purchases will mean that a number of developed countries, including UK, including the European Community, United States, were able, in anticipation, to go to the volume of vaccines which are necessary just to serve their own populations. But as we know, there is a need to cover the whole world, to take into account priorities which have been already designed or proposed by the World Health Organization. So this nationalism is not compatible with the idea of international cooperation and solidarity. So this is the context in which we live. This means that the words, the terms that the international community is using in approving these resolutions, we can also mention the resolution approved by the World Health Assembly also in relation to COVID-19, where cooperation is central. This means scientific cooperation, technological cooperation, cooperation in terms of distribution of products, in this case medicines or vaccines. But then we need to look at this in this context and perhaps be very satisfied of what we are doing in the context of South-South triangular cooperation, because here we find the right philosophy. So we find the philosophy that is based on the understanding that if you can help others to make progress, all will be better and not the contrary. So South-South cooperation is providing now the ideals, is providing now the philosophy on the basis of which, in fact, all the international community should work. So I think that it'd be very interesting to try to push the principles of South cooperation further in order for the international community to adopt them as a basis for work on this understanding that the more you do in order to help other populations, whether this be their neighbors or other countries. It is to the benefit of all, including your own country. And this is part, I think, of the very important philosophy of South-South cooperation, that all parties gain on the basis of these collaborations. So in this sense, I see that there is a bright future for South-South cooperation and South and Triangular cooperation. So I'm a believer that this is a very strong tool for not only the countries of the South, but for the international community to make progress, as I'm saying. And therefore, I will make a short presentation later on some of the aspects which I think should be essential in order to ensure that this cooperation actually ends up with the outcomes that we all expect in terms of improving the way in which our people live, to reducing inequalities, to fighting poverty, and other objectives of the SDGs. But my last word is just to acknowledge the excellent work that has been done by Jorge Stediek over the years as an envoy in the area of South-South cooperation. Jorge, you were able to keep very high on the agenda the issue of South-South cooperation, to show that this is a very important tool, as you have said. It is not a marginal thing. It's something which has an increased power to serve the countries of the South and the global community. So I think you have been able to create this discourse, the narrative, and to make it, maybe I would say, the mainstream narrative about South-South cooperation. You were able to reconceptualize South-South cooperation in the light of the changing world. So it is not BAPA. The word is very different from the time where BAPA was adopted, the Buenos Aires Plan of Action. But you were able to reconceptualize, you were able to put into the concept of South-South triangular cooperation these new factors, including, for instance, as you have mentioned, the expansion in the actors of South-South cooperation. And all this has been done on the basis of the principles, the accepted principles of South-South cooperation, which is also extremely important, and leading to a very successful BAPA plus 40 with a very good outcome document. So I think your leadership has been extremely important in order to increase the awareness about the role of South-South cooperation. And therefore, we are not going to say goodbye, of course. We are going to say we expect to see you soon. Hasta pronto. Well, thank you very much for this opportunity to organize this webinar, and I look forward for the interventions. Thank you, Tarek.
Thank you very much, Dr. Carlos, for the insightful opening remarks. We really appreciate that you have emphasized cooperation as an important element that is based on the human bond in order to achieve common goals. And this shows again that we are living in a very interdependent world. And this is also echoes what the UN Secretary General said at the beginning of this pandemic, that no country will be able to overcome this crisis alone. So there is a why we need cooperation, we need coordination. And also for highlighting some of the challenges of international cooperation. I appreciate the fact that you made an important call, and also by highlighting that South-South cooperation will have a bright future despite the challenges. You are one of the main, if I may say, the intellectual arms of the countries of the South. We are very happy with the partnership we are having with you, and we look forward to even strengthen these ties of cooperation. Thank you very much, Dr. Carlos, for this really important opening remarks. So with this opening remarks, now we'd like to move to our first session of the discussion of today. They will be dedicated on the topic of challenges, experiences, and lessons learned from national and regional cooperation agencies, institutions in the context of the COVID-19 pandemic. And I would like to hand the floor to my friend, Professor Yufen Lee, to moderate this session. Professor Yufen, please, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, Tarek. You mentioned the focus of this session, and I think the three illuminating opening remarks have laid very well the ground for the discussion. And we know the COVID-19 crisis is a massive external shock of unprecedented depth and scale. Experiences have been accumulated in the South on South-Southern Triangular Cooperation for localized disasters, but this time is different. With lockdowns, sudden stop of travel and destruction of both demand and supply sides, for almost all economies in the world, the health crisis quickly expanded also into a socio-economic crisis. The pandemic is a stress test for the capacity of governance arrangements to deal with unexpected shocks. National agencies for international cooperation had to face with great uncertainties at the beginning, trying to figure out the duration and the severity of the crisis, but they quickly sprang into action amid millions of challenges. So today, we are really privileged and honored to have 5 heads of, or deputy heads of national agencies for international cooperation from different continents to be our panelists. When we have dignitaries at this level, normally the moderation will be very light. And in view of our limited time, I will not introduce their distinguished careers and achievements, but their CVs will be put on the websites. I will be just the timekeeper. So each panelist will be having 7 to 8 minutes to speak. I will raise this white sheet when it's 7 minutes and raise the red sheet when it is 8 minutes. So with this, let's go to our first speaker, His Excellency, Mr. Mehmet Metgal, Ambassador, Director General of Morocco International Cooperation Agency. Ambassador Metgal, you have the camera and the microphone, please. Please unmute, first of all. You have the floor.
Thank you very much, Professor. First of all, good afternoon, everyone. Hello from Rabat in Morocco. I would like to thank the United Nations Office of South-South Cooperation, the ISDB, and the South Centre for this initiative by organizing this webinar. I would like also to take this opportunity to thank particularly Georges Chediek for his tremendous work leading UNOSSC these last years. We were very proud to work with him in advocating for South-South and triangular cooperation. We wish you, Georges, plenty of success and happiness for your next endeavor, and we will be pleased to stay in touch. So let's start with the main lessons that Morocco has learned and what Morocco have made towards South-South cooperation. First of all, it is important to mention that the first COVID positive cases in Morocco have been diagnosed on the 2nd March 2020. And starting from that, the heads of state, His Majesty King Mohammed VI, have driven the Moroccan response by placing the human element at the center, based on 3 principles to allow the government to adopt a strategy with first anticipation, second, to prevent the health security for citizens, and third, through solidarity. And in order to achieve these 3 objectives for this response, we have Morocco wielded its reactivity toward 3 solutions. One that is targeting the healthy capacity, the second that worked on the social dimension, and third that worked on economic and financial dimension. 2 main decisions have been taken. First, by His Majesty on the 15th of March to create the National COVID-19 Fund. It is one of the first countries who who adopted a public-private mechanism to support the impact of the crisis on those 3 levels: social, economic, and financial. The second mechanism that the government has set up was by creating what we call the Watchlist committee at the internal level. It was a committee where we have the private sector, social sector, but also the different ministers of the government who were attending. It's on a weekly basis, and different this economic financial decisions have been taken. So let's start with the main measures that we took at the healthy level. First of all, Morocco, under the leadership of His Majesty, decided to close all the frontières and the barriers on the 15th of March. Well, at that time, we are only having 20 cases of COVID coming abroad to Morocco. Second decision was to take the emergency health status in Morocco that started on the 17th of March. And we decided to impulse a national lockdown on the 20th of March. On the 20th of March, we were having 80 COVID cases positive in Morocco. So those are the main decisions that illustrate this anticipative reactivity of Morocco, but also that making as a priority the health capacity of the human being in Morocco. The mandatory to wear the mask started around the 10th April. So the 10th April, all people who were in the street or should go from their home to specific mission, they should wear a mask in private and also in public offices. Still on the health dimension. We decided also, starting on the 17th March, to close all the schools, universities, and all the training centers, all the campus and households for students. So we decided to close all these issues. We decided also to reduce the capacity of presential, of physical working at different offices, like the main administrations. The ones that are not mandatory have closed during that period of lockdown, but others were running and working with about between 10% and until 15% of their human resources. Universities converted their learning to e-learning and distantial learning. So this is the main measures on the healthy. Also, we started bringing more capacity building for testing from partner countries, mainly China and Korea. So we bought a lot of PCR tests from those countries, and also a lot of material with what we call healthy aeronautical bridge between China, Korea, and Morocco, in order to allow Morocco to extend his infrastructure of medical capacity. So we doubled the number of medical beds, and mainly the one for reanimation. We passed it from 1,500 to 3,000 beds in reanimation in less than 3 months. What else? And the impact was very measurable, because the number of positive cases in the 3 months of lockdown were in general around 100 cases on a daily basis, with very low number of deaths, because at the end of the 3 months of the lockdown, we were having about 1.67% of the lethality indicator, which is the number of deaths for 100%. Also on the social side, through this Watchlist Economic Committee, we have made a lot of decisions in order first to support all the people who either lost their job or were impacted by this decrease of economic activity, through the direct aid to those people. So we were targeting with this COVID fund that have been created under the leadership of His Majesty. We were targeting 1 million of employees that have been benefited from this fund, and also 4.2 million of households were benefiting from this fund. This fund have seen a real national mobilization with the public investment in this fund, but also the private sector supported through direct contribution in this fund, and also we have citizens who also provided funds to this national fund. In less than 3 months, we collected about $3.3 billion. At this time we are speaking, we already used $2.4 billion from this fund in these different direct aids, either to the formal sector but also to the informal sector in Morocco. On the economic side, as already I started presenting, we were privileging during the lockdown the working at home with the digital technology and everything. We maintained all the food activities and all the necessary activities that allow Morocco to work, mainly the medical production, but also with our Ministry of Industry, we worked with different major companies in order to transform their production by producing in Morocco local masks and also hydroalcoholic gel and also shields and all this stuff. And finally, at the financial level, through this fund, also we supported about 500,000 companies that benefited from this fund, either through credit, but also through different mechanisms of guarantees in order to allow them to pursue their activity and to still alive. Finally, on the regional perspective, His Majesty launched an African initiative to limit propagation of COVID-19 on the 13th April. This African initiative with African heads of state has a focus to share the experiences through South-South cooperation that all the different African countries built. And 2 months after that, on the 14th of June, Morocco sent medical donations to 20 African countries under the leadership of His Majesty in Africa, and also to the Africa Union Commission with medical products that are made in Morocco 100%. So we sent 10 million masks, 1.2 million shields, 80,000 jackets, 40,000 liters of the hydroalcoholic gel, but also we sent about 100,000 packets of chloroquine that allow people who are positive of COVID-19 to have this medical protocol applied. So this is the main response that Morocco have done. I hope I was resumed in less than 8 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ambassador Mathgal, for your very insightful presentation. Let me once again to say I'll raise a white sheet when it's 7 minutes and red sheet when it's 8 minutes. So our next speaker is His Excellency Mr. Imad Zuhari, Ambassador, Director General, Palestinian International Cooperation Agency. Ambassador Zuhari, you have the camera and the microphone, please.
Thank you very much, ma'am. And in my turn, I would like to welcome our speakers and participants. And at the outset, I really would like to express my appreciation to ISDB, UNOSSC, and to the South Centre for their efforts in promoting triangular and South-South cooperation. Your role has been acknowledged and recognized, and we will continue cooperating with the three respectful entities towards achieving our common goals. As far as the Palestinian International Cooperation Agency is concerned, since March 20th, we have been involved in different activities on national and on international level. As far as the first national concept is concerned, together with the UNICEF, WHO, UNRWA, the Ministry of Health, and the Bank of Palestine, we have organized since the first beginning a national campaign to raise awareness on COVID-19, believing that prevention is better than treatment. So we have organized this campaign to inform our population, whether inside the occupied state of Palestine or in the diaspora, including refugee camps, on the importance of some measures to be taken to avoid COVID-19. That took the form of radio and television spots, billboards, announcements, in addition to a big social media campaign with the support of Palestinian influencers inside and with the support of
we lost the voice.
other Arab. Are you hearing me?
Yes, right now it's good.
Yeah, so I say that this campaign was organized with Palestinian influencers and from Arab and international influencers as well, and it is ongoing up to date. The second issue the agency organized during this pandemic period is to work together with the United Nations Office for Southside Cooperation and the IFTC of the Islamic Development Bank to ensure some funds necessary for the Ministry of Health, and we succeeded in ensuring these funds to enable the Ministry of Health to proceed with the set plans to face the ongoing critical situation. Thirdly, we increased our cooperation with the private sector, and we succeeded to ensure some vital and necessary equipments needed for the Palestinian hospitals, whether on governmental or on private sector level. Together with the PCPM and the Polish aid, we have organized a series of training sessions related to the coordination of international efforts during crisis. And the target was officials from the Ministry of Health who were involved in the follow-up to COVID-19 pandemic. Also, PICA, together with the United Nations Volunteer Program as partner, organized a series of training sessions that started last week on how to introduce United Nations volunteers to bridge the gap during pandemic period. Also, we have launched initiatives with the Higher Council for Innovation to target startups and SMEs. The idea was to work together on creative solutions that will enable the decision makers and the practitioners in the field of health to come out with some ideas that can support the efforts of the Ministry of Health in facing COVID-19. On international level, on national level, first of all, we did our best, regardless of the difficulties, regardless of the current situation, regardless of the limited resources, to complement the work of the decision makers and most particularly of the Ministry of Health. And I think that so far we are very happy of the performance that PICA is conducting up to now. On international level, we have worked together with the Islamic Development Bank and the government of Sudan on a project through reverse linkage mechanism, and I would like to take this opportunity to thank the Islamic Development Bank and the reverse linkage division. The project is aimed at transferring of knowledge to build the capacities of the national laboratory in Sudan, and we have some doctors from Germany and from outside the occupied territory of the State of Palestine and from inside, now in contact with their counterparts in Sudan and elsewhere to proceed with this very, very important project. With China and the Islamic Development Bank and the members of the Organization of Islamic Cooperation, we have a very important program that is related to COVID-19. This will be announced very soon. It has to do with sharing knowledge between member states with the support of the Islamic Development Bank and the experience of the People's Republic of China. On lessons learned, I think that the work of the Palestinian International Cooperation Agency is more enshrined today in the national ecosystem. We have increased our cooperation and concrete cooperation with the Palestinian private sector. The role of the Palestinian International Cooperation Agency is getting bigger and bigger day by day, because it has to do also with being able to deliver. I think that the relation with line ministries is becoming more clear and more efficient, taking into account the role that PICA is taking today. I have some future suggestions before I leave the ground for my colleagues. if I still have a minute. I think it will be very important. It will be very important if we consider a platform that will match capacities with the needs. In other words, it's important to have the UN Galaxy. It's important to have the reverse linkage mechanisms and the related platforms at the South Centre, etc., etc. But I would like to call upon the decision makers here at this level to consider the possibility of creating a platform where needs and priorities by countries of the South are very well defined, where countries of the South as well can jump in and express their willingness to say, yes, I will take that project because it comes within our specialty and framework. It will be very important also to work on increasing the dynamic of communication between our TCAs and our countries. And I think that South-South cooperation, once again, should not be an alternative to North-South cooperation, rather finding ways to increase the cooperation between the North and the South as well. It is important to focus on the role of the South-South countries as not only implementing agencies, but as partners in the decision-making process and the drawing of related strategies. I take this opportunity once again to express my appreciation to all of you, and I leave the floor back to you, Suman. Thank you very much.
Thank you very, very much, Ambassador. You are really to the dot, exactly 8 minutes. With this, let me go to our next speaker, Dr. Rahman Noton. I hope I pronounced the name correctly. If not, please forgive me. Vice President, Turkish Cooperation and Coordination Agency. Dr. Noton, you have the camera and microphone, please.
Thank you very much, distinguished participants and colleagues, ladies and gentlemen. I would like to extend warm regards from Ankara, Turkey, and it is a great pleasure for me to attend this virtual meeting. First of all, I would like to thank UN Office for South-South Cooperation, South Centre, and the Islamic Development Bank for co-organizing this timely event. I would like to take this opportunity also to extend my gratitude to the esteemed speakers for their contributions. As we all know, in the past few months, the COVID-19 pandemic has become #1 global health crisis of our time, and the greatest challenge that humanity has faced since the Second World War. As it has become increasingly obvious, it is much more than a health crisis, as you may agree. It is also a global socio-economic crisis, having the potential to create devastating social, economic, political effects with long-term consequences. Development agencies have a key role, I believe, to play to limit the spread of disease in low and middle-income countries. Global mobilization to fight the health consequences of COVID-19 has been impressive, but more should be done. In addition to raise more funds, I think donor agencies should focus on creating and spreading knowledge of solutions and promoting best practices in the response. It is not certain that by the time the pandemic ends, development landscape will not be the same. There will be changes at the global scale in all areas of development efforts. The world will become more interdependent, and no country will be able to recover from the social economic consequences of the pandemic on its own. Ladies and gentlemen, distinguished participants, now with your permission, I would like to provide some information about TICA's COVID-19 response efforts. In recent days, various development actors have made calls for renewed focus on the health sector and health-related projects. As we confront the challenges of COVID-19 at the global level, one comparative advantage that my agency had in its response efforts was that the health sector had always been a priority for TICA, even before the outbreak of the pandemic. In this regard, TICA's response to the pandemic builds upon decades of work to strengthen health infrastructure in partner countries. Since the early 1990s, TICA has been engaged in thousands of projects to foster accessible, responsive, and resilient healthcare systems around the world. The hospitals that we had built in various partner countries in recent years have increased their response capacity to the COVID-19 outbreak. For instance, Kyrgyz Turkey Hospital, Friendship Hospital, which had just recently been built and equipped with state-of-the-art medical device by TICA in Bishkek, was temporarily handed over to Kyrgyz Ministry of Health over the course of the pandemic. In a similar manner, the Palestine-Turkey Friendship in Gaza, which had been built by TICA and is the largest healthcare facility in Palestine, was transferred to Palestinian authorities to combat the coronavirus outbreak. Moreover, the Batumi Infectious Disease Hospital, which had been renovated by TICA, has become the epicenter of the fight against the COVID-19 outbreak in Georgia. These hospitals had all been built and equipped before the advent of the pandemic and played a crucial role in fostering the response capacity of the partner countries. Right after the outbreak of the pandemic, TICA immediately launched a plan of action to respond to the pandemic. My agency has already mobilized nearly $4.3 million as part of the fight against COVID-19 outbreak. More than 1.4 million people in 53 partner countries have benefited from TICA's efforts against the outbreak, including its distribution of locally obtained masks and other medical supplies, in addition to its ongoing aid operations. TICA's support of partner countries has never been interrupted by the travel restrictions related to COVID-19. When transportation opportunities were limited, TICA provided necessary equipment locally. In addition, TICA has built capacity for the production of the essential medical equipment in the partner countries. TICA encouraged and supported the local production of protective shield masks in various partner countries, including Bosnia and Herzegovina, Libya, Uzbekistan, Mongolia, Uganda, Algeria, Sudan, Bulgaria, Croatia, Kyrgyzstan, Colombia, and Sri Lanka. For instance, 3D printers that were provided to the Center for Entrepreneurship, Innovation, and Modeling, which was built by TICA in Colombia, are used to produce face shields to be distributed to the healthcare providers. In addition, 3D printed face shields are manufactured in the training center established by TICA in the capital city of Sudan to be distributed to Sudanese healthcare providers to support the fight against COVID-19. In Tunisia, for example, TICA provided urgently needed medical equipment to the hospital treating COVID-19 patients. Amid efforts to stem the outbreak in Yemen, TICA has begun the training of health workers from 8 districts in the city of Aden. TICA also reached out to the disabled people and orphans. In Guinea, for example, hygiene and consumable products were donated to orphans, disabled people, hospitals, public institutions. In Azerbaijan, again, TICA provided food and cleaning supplies to the people affected by the outbreak. TICA has also been distributing aid packages consisting of food, cleaning, and hygiene materials in partner countries. In collaboration with the Kyrgyzstan government, TICA provided food packages, personal protection equipment, and hygiene supplies to the elderly, disabled, and those living in difficult conditions in rural areas. In Iraq, for example, TICA has provided food aid to thousands of families in Erbil and Kirkuk living in difficult conditions with no access to employment opportunities. Ladies and gentlemen, COVID-19 does not only threaten our planet with a health crisis, but it also risks putting millions of people in situations of deep economic and social vulnerability and poverty. The consequences of combined health pandemic and global recession will be catastrophic for many developing countries and halt the progress towards the SDG goals. Therefore, in addition to the immediate response to the ongoing health crisis, donors also need to focus on minimizing the long-term social and economic consequences of the pandemic. As I already indicated, my agency strongly believes that South-South and Triangle cooperation will be the key components of dealing with the COVID-19 pandemic and its socio-economic consequences. TICA attaches great importance to the South-South and Triangular cooperation. As an active player on the developed cooperation arena, TICA has a lot of success stories in the context of South-South cooperation and Triangular cooperation. Here, I'm very pleased to say that 5 TICA projects were included in the UNOSSC report as examples of best practice. Our partners has ranged from UN agencies to the establishing donors such as JICA, the Japan International Cooperation Agency, to 1,000 donors such as Mexico and Singapore. Those partnerships have brought a so substantial and sustainable contribution to our development cooperation experience. One example that combines the spirit of South-South cooperation and global solidarity is TICA and Islamic Development Bank Reverse Linkage Initiative. TICA and Islamic Development Bank have been implementing Reverse Linkage Initiative as an effective tool in fostering South-South cooperation and strategic partnership among OIC member countries through promoting knowledge sharing and technology transfer. I'm fully confident that discussion in this virtual meeting will elaborate and share more light on future direction of South-South cooperation and triangular cooperation, both in terms of tackling the COVID-19 crisis and staying track to realize sustainable development goals. I thank you very much, and it's so sad to hear George Chadwick is leaving, but I hope we're going to develop more projects on South-South cooperation, triangular cooperation. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Vice President Nordong, for your insightful presentation. Our next speaker is Dr. Jacob Olugbini, a head of research and partnership of the Directorate of Technical Aid Corps, Nigeria. Dr. Olugbini, you have the camera and microphone, please.
Thank you very much for granting me this opportunity to be one of the speakers at this very important webinar meeting. I want to, first of all, extend the appreciation and thanks from the Director General and CEO of the Directorate of Technical Aid Corps to the organizers of this event, the South Centre, the Islamic Development Bank, and the Southside Corporation Office for organizing this all-important event. And I also appreciate the speakers that have spoken before now and those that have been earmarked to speak for participating in the event. I want to remark that since the outbreak of the coronavirus in December 2019, as reported to the WHO that emanated from China, the world has never been the same. We all agree with me that every aspect of human endeavors has been badly affected and dislocated. Talk of politics, economy, and social life of everybody in the entire world. I want to say that the Nigerian government has done a lot throughout this period of the COVID-19, from the inception since March this year. The government set up a presidential task force specifically to handle COVID-19 pandemic. And that is in conjunction with the Nigeria Center for Disease Control. And this assignment has been carried on even to today, and we are gradually discovering and recovering from this pandemic, just as in the entire world over. I want to say that the primary aim of the Directorate of the Technical Aid Corps since its inception in 1987 was to provide technical assistance to African, Caribbean, and Pacific regions of the world since 1987. And we have been doing this even till now. I want to quickly say that throughout this period of the COVID-19, we have had our challenges, we have had our bitter experiences. We have also learned a great lesson from the pandemic that has invaded the entire world. One of the challenges we face has to do with the volunteers we have sent across this African, Caribbean, and Pacific region. We had the problem of actually monitoring them. Usually, the directorate carried out regular monitoring of these volunteers to be sure that they are actually doing what is expected of them. The lawyers, doctors, nurses, lecturers in different capacities that are sent there to build up the human capacity of these different countries. We carry out regular monitoring to be sure that they are in conformity with the agreement that have been entered into both by the host country where they are serving, as well as the Directorate of Technical Eco, to be sure that no one is actually going out of place. We are also confronted with challenges of having to recruit and deploy throughout this period of COVID-19. There are a lot of them that have actually carried out their assignment, and they are supposed to be brought back to Nigeria after the completion of the assignment. It's a periodic assignment, 2 years technical eco. But throughout this period of COVID-19, we realized that we have not been able to replace some of these volunteers to these various countries, despite the fact that we have various requests from these countries for technical assistance. Also, in between this, we were able, one way or the other, by the federal government to evacuate those that were stranded. Some of these volunteers that were stranded in those countries after the completion of the assignment were evacuated by presidential task force on COVID-19 to make sure that they come back home to Nigeria in peace. Apart from that, I would also want to say that the Center for Disease Control that is in charge of this COVID-19 with the presidential task force carried out daily activities of knowing the number of cases, confirmed cases, and the death rate on a daily basis. We have been updated, and this serves as a guide to actually know and assess the measure of effectiveness of these task force that have been set up by the president and the government of Nigeria. One of the great lessons I would say we have learned over this period of COVID-19 is the fact that we adapt to changing situation of the entire world by being flexible, rather than being rigid in our approach, in our guidelines, and in our principles. We learn to be a little bit flexible so that we can have a respite in terms of situation of this nature or challenges of this nature. No one expected coronavirus to come in this magnitude, but it came, and we have to face it squarely as the entire world in the spirit of Southside cooperation. And this is what the Directorate has done over the period of this COVID-19. Despite the fact that we are not being able to employ or deploy, arrangement is ongoing to recruit and to deploy all these requests to all these countries shortly after the lockdown has been relaxed, so that we can service those countries that are in need of doctors, in need of nurses, in need of lecturers in their various institutions, so that the vacuum that have been created by this COVID-19 can easily be covered without negative impact on those countries and their institutions. So that is how far we are gone as far as Nigeria is concerned. And I just want to thank you for giving me the floor and to say that we are all ready to cooperate in the spirit of Southside and triangular cooperation in any capacity we find ourselves. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Aulugmi, for your insightful presentation. Our last but not least speaker is Mrs. Gala Guazzini, Head South-South Department, Chilean Agency for International Cooperation for Development. Mrs. Guazzini, you have the camera and the microphone, please.
Thank you very much. Good morning, Mr. Jorge Cheriek, Her Excellency Mansour Mudhar, Dr. Carlos Correa, distinguished speakers, and all colleagues connected to this webinar. Thank you for inviting ACSID to share our experience and insights during this challenging world phase. I would like to begin by sharing with you that our diagnosis is that the current situation we are going through caused by the pandemic is only one of the many crises we will have to face in the future, for example, due to the climate change. Among the multiple lessons that this pandemic has showed us, some of them are the relevance of the role of the state in managing crises, the need of strengthening the public health systems, the vulnerability of the economy, and that it is probable that new crises, being they caused by diseases or climatic phenomena, will appear in the style of a tsunami, that is, not only as a big wave, but successive waves that will make us face challenges that we will not be able to solve on our own. In this sense, there is a concept essential to highlight, and that is closely linked to cooperation, which is interdependence. Interdependence is a phenomenon that affects all human relationships, social, economical, and political. In that sense, if interdependence on one hand transforms us into a more vulnerable civilization, for example, from the perspective of globalization, it can also convert us into a more resilient and prepared civilization if we manage to incorporate it as the key of how to face crises united and connected in a logic of cooperation. But is it enough with establishing alliances and traditional cooperation relationships as we have been doing up to now? We clearly believe that the answer is no. We have to be able to reflect on our current processes and aim for a transforming cooperation that allows us to really influence people's lives, incorporating, for example, the following concepts. First, a focus on people. We propose a change from attention on projects, methodologies, and cooperation itself on to how the projects and services that we offer as an agency affects people's lives. Second, systemic approaches. This is to integrate multiple perspectives through a holistic view of problems and solutions. In other words, to move from a logic of sectorial coordination to one of inter and cross-sectorial coordination, using methodologies that allows us to offer integrative solutions with the participation of the public sector, the private sector, the civil society, and the academia, and even social entrepreneurs in what it is called the quintuple innovation helix framework. Third, co-creation. It is the path, the way to generate systemic approaches focused on people, and consists on the need to open spaces, deliver tools, and motivate multiple actors to co-discover, co-define, co-create, and co-implement initiatives that impact. And fourth, experiment. This is the classic concept of learning by doing, promoting small prototypes that can be tested and evaluated, which allows, for example, to discard initiatives that seemed like good ideas, but that ultimately were not. So how will we do this in ACSID? Rescuing the best of the worlds of cooperation and social and public innovation. In this sense, at ACSID, we are making a first effort with some strategic projects. One of them is the mentoring program in cooperation and innovation for global change. This program seeks to promote the incorporation of innovative practices in South-South cooperation with a focus on strengthening personal and team competencies that can efficiently face complex, volatile, and constantly changing scenarios regarding the situation of pandemic and current global climate crisis. For this, the proposal is to develop a mentoring process, which consists of the accompaniment of a group of mentors to a group of guided people. The mentors are prominent people from the world of innovation and cooperation, whose role is to offer the mentored guidance or assistance in the projects that they are promoting through a number of mentoring sessions. Guided people will have new tools that will allow linking the worlds of innovation and cooperation with agile methodologies, project formulation, and theory of change. A second strategic project is the Ideas Contest for Social Innovation and South-South Cooperation. This project is oriented to academic teams or individuals from South American countries that have innovative ideas that can offer novel solutions related to economic reactivation, social development, and environment-related topics, with a provable positive impact in one or more of the South American countries. And third, a network of alumni for social innovation. These virtual platforms allows more than 1,000 former ACSID scholars from Latin American, Caribbean, and African countries to obtain information on different activities, strengthen their contact networks, and promote the search for common solutions to problems affecting their countries, such as health issues, social exclusion, inequality, and environmental sustainability, among others. Finally, and with this I will finish, what is our perspective for cooperation? In short, it is to strongly contribute to open the door to citizens, to creativity and innovation with a human well-being orientation, taking into consideration only the ecological limits of the planet. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Kwasani. This is a very rich session we've had just now. I would like to thank all our distinguished panelists and speakers for their wonderful and very rich presentations, and we have learned quite a lot from them. We cannot give applause, otherwise we'll give a round of applause. With this, allow me to hand the session back to Tariq, please.
Thank you very much, Yufin, for ably moderating this session, and I'd like also to thank the distinguished panelists for the important insight. Now we will be moving to the second session. It will be dedicated to the following topic: how should South-South and triangular cooperation and development cooperation evolve and be enhanced in light of the current pandemic and the decade of action? And to discuss this topic, we have very distinguished panelists that really reflect the diversity of stakeholders that are involved in South-South and triangular cooperation. So let me introduce our distinguished panelists. First, we have Dr. Carlos Correa, Executive Director of South Centre. Then we'll have Ms. Mia Micic. I hope that I have pronounced correctly your name. Director of UN Economic and Social Commission for Asia and the Pacific, ESCAP. And there we have Mrs. Estherine Lizing Futabong, Director of Program Innovation and Planning, Directorate, African Union Development Agency, NEPAD. Then we have Dr. Rashmi Banga, Senior Economic Affairs Officer, Unit on Economic Cooperation and Integration among Developing Countries of UNCTAD. And last but not least, we have Mr. Ahmed Farouk Diken, Senior Technical Cooperation Coordinator, Reverse Linkage, Islamic Development Bank. So before handing over to our distinguished panelists, I'd like to let them know that they have an important task today, intellectual task, if I may say, because they are invited to share with us the insight on how South-South and triangular cooperation should evolve and be enhanced, building on the experiences and lessons learned from the current pandemic and this crisis, but also based on all what South-South cooperation and triangular cooperation have achieved so far until the BAPA Plus 40 conference and recommendations, because we know that the BAPA Plus 40 has come up with important recommendations how we move forward the agenda of South-South and triangular cooperation on sustainable development, and how these modalities of cooperation, South-South triangular cooperation, has also become important and key element of the international cooperation for the sustainable development goals, but other goals, it could be at the regional level, such as the 2063 agenda of the African Union. So with this question in mind, I'd like to invite our panelists to share with us how they see from the perspective of their organizations, from their own perspective, how we can make South-Southern Triangular Cooperation more impactful in responding to these global challenges, but also how we can accelerate the path and also the action, the collective action toward the achievement of the SDGs and other international development goals. So without further ado, I'd like to give the floor to Dr. Carlos. Dr. Carlos, please, you have the floor.
Well, thank you very much, Tarek, again. Thank you for raising these very relevant questions. Of course, I will not be able to respond to all of them, but I will try to address in particular the question about the modalities and the future of South-South cooperation in terms of how can it be enhanced. So as we all know, South-South cooperation may take place through different means. It could be financial cooperation, has been very important. It could be foreign direct investment. It could be through trade, in particular trade in equipment and capital goods is very important because this creates capacities in the receiving countries. It could be through the establishment of new infrastructure. It could be through health, for instance, during this pandemic, we have had examples of Cuban doctors going to other developing countries, or even we have also had the case of South-North cooperation, Cuban doctors going to Italy to help to address the COVID-19. And another important means of South-South cooperation is transfer of knowledge and technology. And I would like to concentrate on this last element, because I'm a firm believer that one of the best means for South-South cooperation to help developing countries to achieve the SDGs is through the creation of capacities, building capacities in the receiving countries, while also enhancing the capacity of the provider country in articulating that assistance. So I will really focus on the knowledge and transfer of technology as one of the most important bases on which South-South cooperation may operate. So let me make just a couple of observations. The first one is that there has been, in relation to the creation of knowledge since BAPA, since the Plan of Action of Buenos Aires, there has been a dramatic change. As you may recall, in the Plan of Action of Buenos Aires, it was already stated that one of the objectives of the Plan of Action was enhancement of the creative capacity of developing countries. Another one was the strengthening of technological capacities of developing countries. And in the outcome document of BAPA plus 40, paragraph 30, there is a very concrete reference to scientific cooperation and to transfer of technologies. So the very important change that has taken place since the Plan of Action of Buenos Aires and BAPA plus 40 is the participation of developing countries in research and development expenditures at the global scale. When the Plan of Action was adopted in Buenos Aires, developing countries accounted for about 5% of the global research and development expenditure. This means that the creation of science and technology was overwhelmingly in the hands of OECD countries. So if you look at the statistics now at the time of BAPA plus 40, you will see a dramatic increase, almost 8 times. By last year, developing countries accounted for 38% of global research and development expenditures. So it means that now OECD account for 62%. Of course, a large part of this is explained by the enormous increase of research and development in China, which now accounts for 23% of the global research and development expenditures, is the second largest spender in research and development in the world, with a very, very fast increase every year. But this means that the situation as compared to 40 years ago is very different. Now we have developing countries which are able to transfer technologies in the high spectrum of technologies. So they can transfer technology in the area of artificial intelligence. One very, very good example, for instance, is digital health. And importantly, the newer of these technologies, modern technologies, can be used in order to solve very, very significant problems of the people, as it is the case, for instance, of health technologies in order to do diagnosis at distance or even to provide treatment. The other case, the good example is the dissemination of mobile phones in Africa and in other continents, low cost but efficient phones that have allowed the people in those countries to get access to internet. Mobile phone is the main tool for accessing internet in many developing countries. And this technology has also allowed, for instance, to get access to financing. So these are transforming technologies that may have a major impact in solving problems of energy access and knowledge access and so on and so forth. And this can now be offered by developing countries. So this means that the room for scientific cooperation, the room for technology cooperation is enormous at the level of South-South, of course, including triangular cooperation. And this concept of cooperating in order to help others to improve is, as I mentioned before, one of the very bases of South-South cooperation as we are talking right now. This means that you are looking at other countries not as competitors, but as others that can contribute with you to improve the conditions of living of the mankind. So you are not trying to stop them, but trying to help them. And this as I mentioned before, is in sharp contrast with nationalists that we are looking at now emerging in some developed countries, as it is the case of the so-called vaccine nationalism, in which countries are just competing to get first the product. They are not fully cooperating in order to develop the science. They are even trying to prevent others from growing in terms of technological advance. And therefore, this is a major opportunity for the South to work together on the basis of the progress the South has made in order to use these technologies for development. Another trend of concern in developed countries, for instance, in the area of pharmaceuticals, which is now a major priority given COVID-19, is the fact that they are coming back to the idea of autonomy. So they have discovered that they are over-dependent, for instance, on active ingredients produced by China and India. As Tarek has mentioned, the world is interdependent, but now on the basis of recognizing or being aware that developed countries are very much dependent on active ingredients for production of pharmaceuticals from two developing countries, so they are now putting into place some policies in order to regain autonomy. So self-sufficiency. So the European Commission is where this direction. As you know, the United States is also trying to relocate plants to produce pharmaceuticals in the country. And this is something which is completely contrary to the philosophy that underpins South-South cooperation, which aims at improving the living of everybody on the basis of helping others to grow. This is the first observation, that now the countries of the South can rely on new developed competencies in the area of high technologies, including high technologies, in order to help each other to achieve the SDGs in different areas. Of course, and this applies in many areas. There is no time, because I guess I have only a few minutes, but there are so many areas in which this can be applied in a productive manner. But the second observation is that in addition, developing countries have a very peculiar advantage. And this is that they have absorbed during the years technologies. They have adapted technologies to the peculiar conditions, to the scales, for instance, to the environments in which they need to operate. And therefore now developing countries can offer, and there are of course many examples already in the documents produced by the UN Office on South-South Cooperation and elsewhere, there are many examples of what is called frugal innovation, or innovation which is not a high-level innovation, but which may be extremely important for increasing productivity, for instance, in the area of agriculture. the area of agriculture, this so-called frugal innovation, which is not done on the basis of a very strong or deep science, may help, for instance, to introduce new plant varieties that are adapted to particular climates, particular environments. It may help to introduce mechanical solutions which are adapted to the needs of poor populations, so where there is no sufficient funding in order to buy modern machines, but there are some innovations which are done in developing countries that can be used very effectively in other developing countries. There are systems, for instance, for storing in agriculture. As you know, there is a major loss in many cases because of lack of appropriate storing. So there are many innovations that are small scale, that are labor intensive, that are energy efficient, that are environmentally sound, and that may provide self-sufficiency to those who receive this. And all, in this case, all South countries can be providers. This is a concept that I have repeated often, that in the area of sub-Saharan cooperation, all countries can be both providers and recipients. And this example of frugal innovation, I think, is one that proves that this may be the case. So in summary, as I also mentioned before, I think that there is a bright future for sub-Saharan cooperation. In particular, in the light of these trends, I think the South has the opportunity to show that a different model based on collaboration, based on solidarity can work, and not the model based on considering another country to be an adversary or somebody you need to stop from improving. Of course, there are many challenges for this. One is, there has been a reference to the creation of platform. One of these is matching the supply and the demand. In some cases, the need to know better what solutions are available is a major issue. In some cases, there is a potential demand which is not served because there are no mechanisms in order to find the appropriate supply. But this is something on which it is necessary to work on. Again, thinking that on the basis that this exchange of intangibles, of knowledge, technology, could be one of the most powerful means in order for the South to achieve the global development objectives. As it has been mentioned, and the achievement of this goal has been undermined tremendously by COVID-19. So in order to match these supply and demands, one very important actions that the government should take in the South is to enhance the capacity of the national institutions, where there have been already very nice presentations, to enhance the capacity where needed of the national institutions to engage effectively in South-South cooperation. And in this context, as you know, the national ecosystem concept developed by the Islamic Development Bank is a very useful tool. And I hope that we can continue working on the basis of this concept and then assist a number of developing countries to enhance the capacity to engage in South-South cooperation, both as recipients, but also as providers of this cooperation. Thank you, Tarek.
Thank you very much, Dr. Carlos, for this very insightful presentation. I really appreciate that you have highlighted important element. You mentioned that, and if you look at South-South triangular cooperation, its essence is in the building and in capacities of countries of the South based on the sharing of experiences, knowledge, and good practices. I think this is an important element. And South-South cooperation is also underpinned by important principles, the principle of mutual benefit. And this is even now, through the Baba Plus 40 recommendation, actors of triangular cooperation accepted the fact that no country is too poor to share and no country is too rich to learn from others. And we have highlighted that because regardless of the level of development, all countries of the South have something to share. They can support each other, and we have seen that with this pandemic. An important element of your presentation is the lesson that we have learned from this pandemic is about the importance of scientific and technological cooperation. You emphasized that was even in BAPA of 1978. Now we have the evidence how this is important for the process of development. There is no way you can develop yourself if you don't own this process through the access to science and technology, and the scientific cooperation is really important. Thank you very much for this insightful presentation, Dr. Carlos. Now I have the pleasure to give the floor to Ms. Mia from ESCAP. Ms. Mia, please, you have the floor.
Thank you very much. And I wish you would be handling the white and red cartons so that it helps us monitor the time, because I think all of us are quite excited to be sharing the panel here and want to bring our experiences, etc. So thank you very much for the invitation, and I'm very happy to be speaking here on behalf of the Regional Commission for Asia and Pacific. I don't know how many people know about the systems of UN, but we are the largest entity in the Asia, and we cover 63 regional and non-regional members from Turkey to very far Pacific Islands, Russia Federation to New Zealand. So we have very heterogeneous groups of countries, and I think while that can present some difficulties, it also gives us a very a wide range of experiences in South-South cooperation, because all of our members, bar three, are actually belonging to developing countries by the WTO standard. And so basically when we talk about the Asia-Pacific cooperation, what we are talking about mostly is really South-South cooperation. But let me try to limit sort of my comments to several points at this instance, and then if we have time more in the question and answer, I would gladly add to that. Let me first comment on something that my predecessors said in his opening remarks, and I think it was related to how do we perceive cooperation and the extent of it existing, particularly in the COVID situation. And I think it may be actually in the eye of the beholder that we see it, because as the COVID-19 pandemic was developing from, or moving away from Asia to the rest of the world, and countries started to react to it in both to address health concerns, but then also later on to start addressing economic and social problems. What we actually saw missing is cooperative, collaborative, concerted actions of the countries. And what was very noticeable in the early stages of pandemic was that it was almost that every country was fending for itself and being, of course, reactive to the national needs and in self-interest, because it was the matter of the lack of supply of essential goods or medical products, etc., etc. And so it took a while for actually the first signs of cooperative action to come, and I'm speaking now on behalf of what was happening in Asia and Pacific. It didn't come across the whole continent. It came from the sub-regions, and so we had some of coordinated action from the group in Southeast Asia and some in South Asia, and they came out publicly speaking about what they can be doing, first and foremost in terms of the health immediate emergency reactions, and then later on in terms of how to exit from the crisis, and B, how to perhaps put in place some initiatives and the safeguards so that next time it happens, it's not actually hitting them that badly. But we still are lacking a sort of across the board South-South universal statements about that, unless you want to take into account some of the resolutions that have been recently passed in that context. This is in stark contrast to what was happening globally at the level of, say, G20 in the crisis of 2008, right? When we had very quick reaction and concerted actions put in place in terms of how to defend from the crisis. So that's one thing. But then also what diversity in our region shows is that some of the actually developing countries in this, call it South, have more characteristics of the North countries in their behavior than others, right? And so someone was mentioning that we can actually notice a competitive behavior, and in many cases this comes through the economic sort of competition in terms of taxes, and so instead of having a sort of coordinated action in how to deal with tax regulations, foreign direct investment, multinational companies and everyone else, you may notice that you have a competitive behavior on behalf of these countries, and that in the long term only hurts them and does not help them in their industrial development, etc. So I think we need to actually see how do we enhance the incentive and the benefits for the long-term cooperation of countries, even though if they belong to the different sort of categories of developing countries. And I think in ESCAP we are trying to work with our members to establish different platforms for them to be able to actually engage and contribute through collaborative actions. Most recently, for example, when we were discussing the need to enhance regional cooperation, we got really a huge support of countries passing the resolution on COVID and regional cooperation. And so we are working now with countries in different sectoral areas on what needs to be put in place to really enable them to work closer together. And let me only comment on the area that I'm responsible for, which is in area of trade facilitation and connectivity. And so in the context of supply chains and connectivity, we are trying to see how we can use the platforms to enhance cross-border cooperation and operability in different systems, so that when other measures needs to be put in place, like in pandemic, that still there is some movement across the borders, in particular for cargo, that is essential for the needs of health or other food and maybe parts and components, etc. So there are different platforms. I can't, given the time, I can't go through them. But I think what was said by Carlos resonates with what we are doing here in this region, and it is related to the creation of knowledge and the transfer of knowledge. And this is in particular with respect to the frontier technologies and in a sort of fourth industrial revolution realm. And here, what we are trying to see is how countries actually can enhance their longer-term prospects in that area by by engaging in regulatory cooperation, right? Because what is preventing many countries to actually utilize digital technology for their development, and that came through in COVID situation in particular, is actually that there is no cross-border regulation that allows usage of different systems like e-payments, insurance, and other sort of regulatory based instruments of economic activities. In competition area, this is the same thing. We have been promoting knowledge transfer and transfer of technology through our regional institute that is also working with others at the global level in terms of the transfer of technology through perhaps pooling the licenses for the patented technology and other things. And so I think there are many variants at which the countries can collaborate more closer together, but it is the one area that I want to still put ahead, and I'll close with that, is in perceiving their role in actually reinstating the trust in multilateralism. So, it's very easy to try to see us against them and to try to sort of build something for ourselves, forgetting that it is actually the multilateralism that has all the values for everyone, and that even if us constitute the dominant group in the world, we can still not go on our own, and so that it is the global humanity that needs to stick together in building more resilient future. And I think Secretary General has been talking recently about these things, and perhaps we should be really looking at how do we enhance the voice and the role of Global South in rebuilding the value of multilateralism for the good of all of us, because without it, I don't think we will be able to actually reach the sustainable development as we were planning. So let me stop there. And I'll be happy to re-engage in the discussion. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mia, for this is sharing with us a very important element of your work at the regional level, because without any doubt, the UN regional commissions are an important mechanism for coordination, collaboration among the countries of the South. But also you have highlighted that in your region, you have also countries of the North. And as I mentioned earlier, one of the main emerging issues from the BABA Plus 40 was triangular cooperation, how we can bring all together in order to achieve concerted effort in order to achieve common goals. You have mentioned so many challenges in terms of how to enhance incentive for long-term cooperation, the lack of regulation, the same regulations at the regional level, and most importantly, what you have emphasized, that how we can restore trust in multilateralism. I think the UN could play an important role in this regard, because the UN has a lot of assets. Its convening power, operational capacities, capacity to mobilize partners, resources, and to establish mechanisms for coordination and cooperation, like the one that you are leading, the one in the Asia Pacific through ESCAP. But thank you very much for this interesting presentation. I really appreciate. Now I would like to move on to our next speaker, and Mrs. Estherine Lezing Futabonk. I hope that I have pronounced your name correctly. Sorry for that. From Program Innovation Planning Directorate, African Union Development Agency, Nepal. So Mrs. Estherine, please, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, Eric, for having us. We will just want to first take this opportunity to thank the organizers the United Nations Office for South-South Cooperation, the Islamic Development Bank, and the South Centre for inviting NEPAD to this very important discussion. And I really want to appreciate all the contributions that the previous speakers, first in the opening session and then the first panel, have made on this very important topic on South-South cooperation, South-South and trilateral cooperation. Let me first start by reiterating and emphasizing the point that the African Union and Africa really is very attached to the issue of South-South cooperation. We do see it, as was alluded in the previous session, as a mechanism process that allowed all the participating countries to benefit from this type of cooperation and exchange. Now, I think the panel discussions we are having today is to see how we can enhance South-South cooperation. And I do like the way it is couched, using the word enhance in the light of the current pandemic and the decade of action. So the word enhance, I mean, of course, imply that we do have mechanisms and processes that we have been using for South-South cooperation, and there are some good stories to tell and to share. In this regard, how do we build on those? How do we take in the situation that have been exposed by the COVID environment? How do we build on processes, on mechanisms that are existing, and see how we can make them even better? We, as the African Union Development Agency, NEPAD, as you know, we have been transformed from what we were as a planning agency to the development agency. So it's the first ever development agency for the continent. We are placing a very important and vital role on strong international solidarity and collaboration to support not only the SDGs, but more importantly, of course, the Agenda 2063 of the African Union, while effectively responding to the global COVID-19 crisis, and ensuring that we support our member states to the part of socioeconomic recovery that is equitable and resilient. I just really want to emphasize on those two words of equity and resilience in whatever measures that we are putting in place to support the post-COVID recovery actions, and therefore the type of development cooperation to South-South collaboration that we should be looking for. I think saying that I want to echo some of the points that were made earlier in terms of ensuring that we continue pushing for South-South cooperation. Because given the environment that we are living in, where because of the pandemic, countries we are seeing, as the example of vaccine nationalism that was mentioned earlier, I think we need to continue to make that case, but make the case and link it to the development paradigm that we are pushing for. So we're looking at development that goes beyond just, equating development to money and transfer of money, but looking at the questions of equity and resilience and how we can learn from each other in the global south to ensure that we design policies that help to build more resilient economies and communities. So I think the first speaker in this session, Dr. Carlos, spoke about research and development. which we think is a critical area of focus for South-South cooperation. But we also want to highlight the issue of investments as a new critical area that we think should be given more prominence in South-South cooperation and collaboration. I think we heard from the various countries speakers in the first session on what they have been doing in their countries to promote investment. We do think that this is an opportunity presented where countries now are looking for shorter value chains to promote manufacturing in their countries. That should allow us to see not only from the perspective of technology transfer from the South, but also on investment flows from the global South to, to support manufacturing processes in member states. We also strongly believe that we need to look at the issues of linkages, link the issues of policies to strategies and money flows, rather than, at one point we were just looking at actors. I think when we look at enhancing South-South cooperation, we not just look at actors, but look at the issues of the objectives that we are trying to attain. That should help us to address the questions that were mentioned earlier of building equity and resilience in the actions that we are supporting. So in that regard, in that broader context, we do think as AUD and NEPAD that leveraging private sector investment in support of South-South cooperation should be really given more prominence and build on these very good experiences that we are having now. As the Islamic Development Bank is playing a very good role throughout this COVID period. Other banks, including, for instance, the Afrexim Bank, have created platforms to support, procurement processes for the global South. So we think that perhaps more emphasis, attention can be given to how to leverage our private sector investment to support South-South cooperation. Of course, the issue, and we do have the African Continental Free Trade Area that the continent has put, which we hope will help us to design instruments that will support South-South investments going forward. We also, of course, think we have to continue sharing experiences for innovative policy designs. We have been, I can speak for African countries. I think the COVID-19 has exposed and probably exacerbated some of the challenges that we have at national level, and for which we need to have innovative policy designs. We can learn from each other and share these experiences. For that, we do need to have robust platforms that can make it easier for countries in the South to share these policy experiences for countries to take them on board. Lastly, we also believe that we need to have more coordinated actions. And if I take the case of the continent, there was a quick response when the COVID started, and countries were all rushing to acquire and procure medical supplies, and they were competing against each other, which only made it more costly for the actions that the procurement that they wanted to do. But the AU came on and helped to create a platform to support coordination of procurement. And I think that perhaps these kinds of platforms, not only for procurement, but also I think the colleague who spoke earlier from Morocco, I think, made the suggestion where countries from the South can offer resources to support different actions in different countries. So look at the creation of different platforms to facilitate this kinds of exchange will be important and critical. And of course, we can all learn from the data that is collected from our respective countries to support not only policy work, but perhaps also investments, and give us a better stand in terms of engaging in more global processes. I think the point was made earlier on better representation in global institutions of countries in the South. I think it's, from the NEPAD perspective, we think it's really important. We speak about common African positions when we talk about global negotiations. I think it will be encouraging to also look at platforms that gives opportunity for common positions from the South in global institutions, so that we can leverage these institutions and processes and enhance South-South collaboration for the interest and benefit of everyone. So maybe I can stop here for now, and there are questions, we'll take them.
No, thank you very much, Estherine, for really insightful presentation and all the ideas that you have shared with us and the experience of the African Union in dealing with this pandemic, because the African Union itself is a very privileged and important platform and mechanism for South-South cooperation, and as you highlighted also for a coordinated action, especially when it comes to challenges like this one. I took note of so many important ideas that you have shared with us, including the idea of a collective resilience. Because in challenges like this one, a global challenge, there is no way we can fight this pandemic, this crisis, by taking unilateral action. It should be collective action, because if we don't fight the pandemic globally, there is no way we can overcome this crisis. And you have highlighted also important element, which is the interlinkages or the linkages that should exist between policies, strategies, and resources. And we have an important framework for that, which is the BAPA plus 40 outcome document. The BAPA plus 40 outcome document really came up with important recommendation how we can make between the three important elements that we have highlighted in your presentation. Thank you very much for the presentation. And now I have the pleasure to give the floor to Dr. Rashmi from UNCTAD. Please, Dr. Rashmi, please, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, Excellencies and distinguished participants. Let me join all the panelists to thank the organizers for inviting me for this very timely organized session on South-South cooperation. I come from the South-South unit of UNCTAD. This is the unit on economic cooperation and integration among developing countries. It's ECIDC. And we heard a lot of panelists talk about South-South solidarity. We have recently come up with a publication on building South-South solidarity at the time of COVID-19. I have shared the link of this publication in the chat. You are free to download that publication. And I want to share some key messages of that policy brief. Our estimates show that South is facing a financing gap of more than $2 trillion. And this is in the face of falling economic activity, rising health expenses, falling exports, and rising debt levels. So we know that this financing gap is only going to increase during and post-pandemic. Now, while advanced countries are spending, huge bailout packages, their average is something like 30% of their GDP. The average rescue measures for developing countries is something like 5% of the GDP. So our estimates show that South or the developing countries are going to be more adversely affected because also of the large proportion of population near the poverty line. And it will also take more time to recover. Now, South-South solidarity is urgently needed for recovering better. And this reminds me of what President Roosevelt said. economic diseases are highly contagious. So we really cannot afford to leave any country behind. All countries together need to recover better from the pandemic, and especially in the South, given the vulnerability of the South. So this, in our policy brief, what we have really done is identified and prioritized the areas where South-South solidarity is urgently needed and what it can achieve post-pandemic and also during the pandemic. 3 areas have been identified as priority areas. The first one is scaling up South-South finance. I think South-South solidarity is really required for scaling up South-South finance. While the publication goes into a lot of details about what actions can be taken by the South together, one key message which I want to share over here is it is very important to scale up finance of the regional development banks, especially like Asian Infrastructure Investment Bank, Islamic Development Bank, and BRICS New Development Bank, so that they are able to increase the scale of their activities, the scope of their activities, and also widen their constituencies. It is important that these regional banks not only provide finance to SMEs in their member countries, but also to the LDCs in their region. So South-South solidarity for scaling up South-South finance is urgently required to face this pandemic and recover better. The second area is building resilience through trade and industrial policies. We all know that in the South, the industry has been actually destroyed. The trade has fallen steeply. And I totally agree with my previous panelist when she says that it is very important now to build manufacturing capacities in the developing countries. For this, what does the developing countries need to do? The developing countries need to give industrial subsidies in the form of financial support to specific industries, tax credits, rent rebates to SMEs, export subsidies, debt forgiveness. All these are very important policy instruments. But we know that the developing countries do not have the policy space to go ahead and provide these subsidies, to the much needed subsidies to recover better. So South-South solidarity is needed in this area. We are proposing a temporary WTO peace clause for using industrial subsidies at the time of the pandemic. And I think this is one area, it has also been mentioned by other panelists, that we really need to come together. The South needs to come together to preserve policy space so that they are able to use the policy instruments that are much needed to recover and also to build their industries as well as their trade sectors post-pandemic. The second action that is also needed is to very judiciously use their agriculture and industrial tariffs. It is important to reassess your tariffs. There is a lot of tariff water. Why tariffs? It is not protectionism. Tariffs are important source of government revenue. They are important for regulating the import of luxury items into the country, especially at the time of crisis. They are important to give level playing field to your domestic producers. So it is important to reassess and judiciously use your agricultural and industrial tariffs. For this, we will need South-South solidarity in international trade and investment agreements. Then it is also important, we all know that a lot of advanced countries are talking about industrial sovereignty, and this will have an adverse impact on the existing global value chains. The global value chains will be shortened. There will be a lot of reshoring taking place. So at this time, South-South solidarity is urgently needed for enhancing South-South trade, South-South investments, and for building regional value chains, especially in the areas of food, health, medicines, and medical and related products. And we at UNCTAD are now working on to identify what can be the potential regional value chains that can be developed, what countries can provide what in terms of their competitiveness in these priority areas. We are also calling for a regional emergency fund so that countries in the South are able to face the pandemic, not just the current pandemic, but also the future pandemic. So these are some of the actions that have been identified and areas where South-South solidarity can help countries to recover better from the pandemic in the South. Again, if you look at, there has been a lot of push for trade liberalization during the pandemic, especially given the enhanced use of digital technologies. But we know that there is also a widening digital divide. And what the push for free trade liberalization will do is just enhance all the existing inequalities. So UNCTAD has proposed a 10-point South-South digital cooperation agenda, which can help regional integration, which can help industrialization in the South. It really focuses on how countries together in the region build their data economies, build their digital infrastructures, build their digital skills and digital capacities. But again, the key message or the strong message that we want to put forward is that in the digital economy, competition is better than negotiations. Now, I know we have very limited time and I would really like to have more time for question answers. So in the conclusion, I would like to say that South needs to aim to recovering better from the pandemic. And for this, it is important to treat the COVID-19 pandemic not only as a crisis to be managed, but as an opportunity to identify and address the structural barriers in the way of more prosperous, equitable, and resilient future. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Ashmi, for this very important presentation and for highlighting the priority areas and all the recommendations that you have made in your publication on South-South cooperation at the time of COVID. I encourage all the participants, of course, to consult this publication. You have highlighted the important aspect that we have to take this crisis as an opportunity, how we can correct the structural aspect of the international cooperation, all the limitations that exist in order to move forward toward our common goals and how to achieve the SDGs. You have highlighted so many important elements. Thank you very much, Dr. Ashmi, for this insightful presentation. Now I have the pleasure to give the floor to Mr. Farouk from the Reverse Linkage Division of the Islamic Development Bank. Mr. Farouk, please, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, Mr. Tariq. For the sake of time, I will go straight into some of the insights that we want to share. We can all agree that the pandemic has taught us the importance and criticality of strong and effective partnerships that lead to results on the ground in dealing with such crises. This puts an added emphasis on the role of South-South cooperation. Before the pandemic, a lot of South-South cooperation activities were already being undertaken, mostly in a bilateral fashion with support from multilateral development institutions, such as the Islamic Development Bank, as well as others. However, the coordination of these types of activities can sometimes be isolated, and we get to know of them through publications and through regional and global events. This can sometimes lead to a lot of good work going unnoticed. Inevitably, this leads to missed opportunities for collaboration, which could have otherwise solved development challenges in the countries that we serve. The pandemic, in a way, has shed a brighter spotlight on this challenge of effectively and rapidly matchmaking between demand and supply for development solutions through South-South cooperation. In this sense, we have to commend the work of the UNOSSC on the South-South Galaxy, which provides great resources on finding solutions and looking for opportunities to connect with solution providers. So in this sense, we invite other institutions and countries to use this more frequently to meet this need for effective matchmaking between demand and supply. Related to this is also the fact that we also need better ways to respond to crises through South-South cooperation. Many countries of the South already have excellent mechanisms for responding to disasters and emergencies, while many others lack the necessary capacity to deal with such challenges. So if 2020 has taught us anything, we can be sure that the world will continue to deal with crises based on different causes, such as worsening climate change, prolonged conflicts in many regions of the world, and widening gap between the rich and the poor, all of which can lead to an increase in the number of those left behind. So from our point of view, in order to increase coordination and effective collaboration among the countries of the South, strong institutional arrangements are still very much needed. We know from the case of our own member countries that out of 57, only 13 have some of the institutional arrangements that are needed to participate in South-South cooperation effectively. And we have already heard from Morocco, Nigeria, Turkey, and Palestine to see some good examples of how countries can be effective when they have these institutional mechanisms. So to rectify this concern, the Islamic Development Bank and the South Centre joined hands in 2018 to formulate this framework that have been already mentioned, the national ecosystems for South-South cooperation. And of course, this was coordinated also with the UN Office for South-South Cooperation. We call this framework the National Ecosystem for South-South and Triangular Cooperation, which consists of 7 main pillars, which includes political will, a national strategy on South-South cooperation, a national focal point for coordinating South-South cooperation activities, information bases, connected actors, a national financing mechanism, and a national performance management system for South-South cooperation. So we believe these pillars will provide a good basis for countries to be engaged in South-South cooperation effectively, not just in terms of being a provider of development solutions to others, but also in being a recipient that can coordinate the transfer of solutions from other countries. In the context of the ongoing pandemic, let us imagine a situation where all the countries of the South have this ecosystem in place, in which they at least possess the strategy and an agency that can coordinate South-South cooperation activities. We can all agree that the efficiency of coordination and cooperation would undoubtedly lead to sustainable and tangible results on the ground. So for us, this perspective is a priority, and the bank has already developed a capacity development program to support its member countries establish their national ecosystems for South-South cooperation. And of course, we will be managing this together with our partners like the UNOSSC and South Centre. And this will allow these countries to strengthen the most important element, element of strong partnerships by having the national capacity to engage in development cooperation. In addition, the existence of strong national ecosystems will inevitably lead to stronger regional and global South-South cooperation through increased number of players that will introduce new ideas, resources, and expertise into this into the global partnership. Another point I'd like to share is regarding positioning South-South cooperation as a preferred approach to meet development objectives. To do so, we believe we need to create structured end-to-end implementation mechanisms for South-South cooperation, which will focus on results beyond activities. And our answer to this is the bank's reverse linkage mechanism, which we introduced in 2014, which has so far helped us connect 21 countries to help one another solve development challenges. So I think we need to collectively think of long-term results-focused approaches which can help us solve development needs of people on the ground. So for the sake of time, I wanted to just share these points with everyone, and looking forward to the conversation. Thank you.
No, thank you very much, Mr. Farouk, for this presentation, important, interesting presentation in which you have highlighted the need for coordination and effective collaboration, and for that countries will need strong institutional arrangement. And as you rightly mentioned, we are working together towards supporting countries in order to establish this ecosystem for South-South cooperation, and we look forward to make this endeavor advance in the near future, because this pandemic has really was really a challenge for so many of us. We were in some way obliged in order to stop so many activities that we have when we were taking with each other. And also we're happy with all the partnership that we have established with the bank in supporting some countries of the South in dealing with this pandemic and its consequences, and also for highlighting the issue of result-focused approaches and data, because it's really important for us to know what is working and what should be enhanced, because these are important elements for a learning process for countries themselves, but also how they can share their experiences and their knowledge with other countries, and also in order to establish partnership. Thank you very much. So that was the last presentation for this session, but for the discussion session, I think we have to combine the two sessions. And just I'd like to see the questions that our participants have or the comments they have made or the questions they have asked through the chat, the Q&A icon. So I think we have two questions. The first one is this is the following question. The question is the following: based on the unprecedented impact of COVID-19 and on international networks at all levels, I wonder if there is any future vision for post-COVID-19 to reshape the way South-Southern Triangular Cooperation is carried out, particularly by the competent international agency, mainly the UNOSSC. It seems to me that this is a question that's addressed to the UNOSSC, but I'd like to open it to other colleagues in the two panels. The following question is the following question: did lockdown measures had impact more on GDPs rather than on COVID cases? COVID fatalities and recoveries. Could we have done with partial lockdown measures? What factors lead to spread international passengers, population density, health capacities, governance, among others? These are the two questions that we have received. So maybe I will invite our distinguished panelists to react to this question, and mainly the first one, before I come in with my own comment, maybe later on after listening to you. So I don't know if any distinguished panelists would like to react, and especially how, because that was the subject of the second session, how we look at the future, how South-South cooperation could be enhanced. You have shared so many ideas and so many important insights how we can do it, but we would like to open the floor to you if you can just summarize with few main messages how we can do that based on the lessons learned from this pandemic. I don't know if any panelists or distinguished participants would like to react to this question very briefly. If I don't see any hand raised, so maybe this is a question to the office, because you know that the office has the mandate as a focal point in the UN in order to facilitate, promote South-South cooperation at the global level, but also within the United Nations system. And what we do, we have different aspects of this, our mandate. The first one is the policy making process of South-South cooperation that we are supporting through the formal processes of the UN. And one of them, the most important of these processes, of course, the conferences of the UN that we are supporting from the substantive point of view. The last one was the BAPA Plus 40 conference that took place in Argentina last year. And with that conference, we came up with really important and forward-looking recommendations how we can shape South-South cooperation of the future, especially in the current context. And these recommendations have proven very useful in the context of the COVID-19 pandemic, because we have seen that so many countries, even they were facing so many challenges, they started and also expressed their solidarity with other countries in order to overcome the health crisis, but other consequences in terms of the impact on their economies and societies. So we play an important role in supporting countries and other stakeholders in shaping the policy recommendations how South-Southern Triangular Cooperation should be conducted at the bilateral, regional, and the global level. And this is an important element of our mandate. The second element of our mandate is we are also providing platforms for dialogue discussions, the one that such as the one that we are having today. And this is provide an opportunity for all stakeholders to come together from different perspectives and to see how they can share experiences and how they can also coordinate their actions and come up with innovative ideas how to move forward the agenda of South-South and triangular cooperation for sustainable development. It is true that we are doing it in a very special context and a very challenging context, but South-South cooperation, as it was mentioned and emphasized by so many distinguished panelists, has proven to be an important element of international cooperation for sustainable development. And even Dr. Carlos said in his presentation that he sees a bright future for South-South cooperation, provided that we take it from the right angle, that it is a modality of cooperation that is based on a very noble principles of cooperation, solidarity between the members of the global humanity, that is mutual benefit, that we have to see it as beneficial to all actors involved. Another element that also we highlight in our work is the establishment of partnerships. And this is the element that also highlighted by Estherine when she said that we need to look at the interlinkages that should exist between policy, strategies, and resources. And the end of this continuum is, of course, the resources, and how the mobilization of resources will allow us to achieve the goals that we have set in the strategy based on the policy recommendation that we have set together and have agreed upon as the international community. So those are the three elements that we play in order to make South-South cooperation more innovative and more forward-looking in achieving sustainable development goals in the South, but also through the modality of triangular cooperation is also in the North. And one of the elements, for example, that underpins the triangular cooperation in our country is to learn from others, and no country is too poor to share with others. So these are the elements that really compose the mandate of South-South cooperation. And if you encourage all participants, and especially the colleague who asked this question, to look at the BAPA plus 40 outcome document, you will find very innovative ideas how we can undertake and how we can organize ourselves as a global community in using the modality of South-South cooperation and triangular cooperation to achieve the sustainable development goals. These are a few words that I wanted to share with the participant who asked this question. I don't know if other colleagues would like to comment on this before
may I add a couple of points?
Yes, go ahead, Mr. Farouk.
Thank you, Mr. Tariq, and thank you, Mr. Nabil, for the question. So here, I think just to add to what Mr. Tariq has said, you know, the BAPA plus 40 is a good, an excellent document that provides a lot of guidance in terms of what countries and institutions should be doing to address the future of development cooperation and South-South as well as triangular cooperation. So now in this sense, I guess what's needed is now action from all actors, action from the governments themselves, action from the institutions like ourselves. And that's going back to what I was mentioning about the bank's work with, together with the South Centre and the UNOSSC on national ecosystems. We believe that this is really foundational, in the sense that, if countries want to be involved in development cooperation in an effective manner, they really have to have certain pillars in place to help them achieve their objectives. The second thing I want to sort of highlight from what Mr. Tariq also said is this, is the dimension of being a provider as well as a recipient. So oftentimes I think countries sort of look at what they can provide to others, but we have to also be aware of the other dimension or the other level, which is what could be received from others. So I think countries have to look into what they would like to take from other countries, and South-South cooperation is a way to achieve that objective as well. So in this context, for instance, there are already a lot of projects going on where countries are cooperating, sharing expertise. And so I think when it comes to the strategic orientation of the countries of the South, they should look into, or we should work with them to look into those two dimensions of being a provider. So what kind of solutions that they have that they can share with others, as well as what kind of needs that they have that they can obtain from others through partnership and South-South cooperation. So those are a couple of things that I wanted to highlight as well on this question. Thank you.
No, thank you very much, Mr. Farouk, for this comment, because what you have said is really important, and this is a tangible evidence that shows that with the BAPA plus 40, we have a common narrative. We have a common framework in order to achieve common goals, and this is really important because now we start talking the same language and we have the same objective. The reason why we have established this partnership with you and so many others that are present in these two sessions, and this is what the message that I try to convey to our colleague Nabil. But thank you very much for your comment. If I don't see any other hand raised, so maybe thank you very much for all the panelists for their insightful presentation, and also I'd like to thank Professor Fuin for moderating the first session. Now we'll move on to the closing remarks, and we have two speakers, Mr. Jorge Shediek, Director of Foreign Office Southside Corporation, and Envoy Secretary General Southside Corporation. Mr. Shediek, please, you have the floor.
Thank you. I had my conclusion notes, but instead of that, there is a question they asked me, which is, what are the two things you would consider, based on my experience, that we need to add to the fight for South-South cooperation? And the first one is believing in it, because it's one thing to conceptually argue it, politically speaking, based on the principles which are absolutely valid. But one of the reasons I really fought to get this position is that I saw firsthand how South-South cooperation makes a difference. Before joining this position, I was 25 years a UN person in the field. And on many occasions, I saw the comparative advantages of going to a partner instead of looking to the north, which in many occasions, in spite of sometimes the generosity, did not have the relative experience or the relative knowledge of the situation to provide valuable solutions. So I think one element, if we want to become committed soldiers of South-South cooperation, is to believe in it, and to believe it from experience. I could do it directly on the field, but again, I invite you to use platforms like Galaxy and the report we presented last week of 195 practices, so we can convert ourselves to this fight. We have to be able to make the argument that to the people who are not participating in this event. We have to confront many people who are cynical about South-South cooperation, who consider it a marginal element, that they consider it as an excuse from countries of the South to not join certain institutional architectures. So we have to really have a very strong understanding of what South-South cooperation it is. And from there, move on and help advance the cause. And I'm very proud, and I can say it now that I'm leaving, that BAPA plus 40 was my invention. Nobody wanted to have a conference. And we thought, and I came from the experience of Rio plus 20, because I was a resident coordinator in Brazil when I was there, to propose this conference, and it came through. And normally this UN conference, you know, they have a very laborious mechanism to advance the agenda. But for a series of fortuitous circumstances, instead of having an accumulative document, we have a qualitatively different document. So my argument is believe and push the limit, push the border of what South-South cooperation can do in all spaces, be it political within your own countries and within your own spaces, regionally, within the institutions, try to get many more like the Islamic Development Bank to adopt it as part of the DNA, help like institutions like the South Centre in developing an even more solid knowledge base. And the idea is use the global architecture to get more and better South-South cooperation. And it can be done. This, I'm leaving, and this is my next to last. Tomorrow, my last day, I have one extra event, but I have participated in 37 events in the last 45 days. So, and it's not that they invite me because of my personal beauty or my charisma. I think they invite me for what we represent in terms of South-South cooperation. So the space is there, and let's continue doing it. Let's continue showing that we are changing the world, and let's fight for more people to join and develop a language to communicate that to others. That is the biggest challenge. I always knew it from the UN in the field. We talk to each other about issues that are very important, but to people who have to fight the daily life in developing countries sound almost esoteric. So another challenge is to develop this so this becomes the cause, not just of us, the initiated, but also for the peoples of the South, so we can embrace each other to build a better world for all of them. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Jorge, for this really insightful closing remarks. And now I have the pleasure to give the floor to Mr. Amadou Thierno Diallo, Director General of Global Practices of Islamic Development Bank, for some closing remarks. Mr. Amadou, please, you have the floor.
Thank you very much. Can you hear me?
Yes, clearly. Thanks.
Okay. Distinguished speakers and valuable participants, on behalf of the Islamic Development Bank, I would like to thank you all for your valuable participation during this event. The important lessons, experience, and insight that you have shared will surely provide development cooperation institutions with the ideas that are necessary to continue to innovate in the area of South-South and triangular cooperation, so that we can continue to fulfill the development needs of our member countries. I would like to highlight a few thoughts from today's discussion that can hopefully provide the impetus for further action in the coming days and months. The first point I would like to share is that national ecosystems for South-South and triangular cooperation in our member countries, as well as in the South in general, needs to be enhanced. Many countries already have some element of this ecosystem for being engaged in South-South and triangular cooperation, but we believe more structured and organization are needed on this front. We have already seen today from our valuable speakers from cooperation agencies that when countries have the institutional arrangement in place, including a dedicated unit or agency for development cooperation and a national strategy to guide these activities, countries are better able to respond to the needs they identify from their counterpart. This need has been further amplified during the COVID-19 pandemic, where agile and calculated actions are even more vital compared to normal times. The second point I would like to share is that coordination needs to be enhanced as well. When we look at the landscape of development cooperation, we will notice that we have a long list of partners, vast set of resources, and immeasurable amount of know-how and expertise, which can be shared to achieve sustainable results in development. Therefore, coordination is a must. Let me emphasize it one more. Indeed, better coordination is a must. We need to consider more innovative ways of coordination to ensure that these efforts lead to actionable and relevant intervention, which in turn achieve sustainable results. The COVID-19 pandemic has created an environment in which the normal way of doing things, that is the way we work, study, commute, and participate in social life, are all being reconsidered and reformulated. Some of these changes will surely become permanent. COVID-19 has profoundly changed the way we see our world. Now it's up to us to decide whether this is an existential threat for South-South and triangular cooperation, or the opportunity of a lifetime to redefine its positive role and impact for our societies and economies. It is a good time to look into the way we collectively undertake South-South and triangular cooperation by looking into the global architecture and the new innovative ways of coordination by leveraging technology to the extent possible. The aim here is to use our collective resources in the most impactful way possible. Today's webinar, as well as others organized in the last few months, provide a good basis for us to collect our views, observation, and suggestion, and formulate improved ways of working together through South-South and triangular cooperation. We see this as not the end, but the continuation of the global conversation on development cooperation, and hope to work with all of you in greater harmony to achieve a better development outcome. On behalf of the Islamic Development Bank, I would like to end by thanking our partners, the UN Office for South-South Cooperation and the South Centre, for the collaboration in co-organizing this event and all of the prior events. Let me also thank all the speakers and participants one more time for their valuable insight on the future of development cooperation. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much, Mr. Amadou, for this really insightful closing remarks. So we have come to the end of our event of today, and I'd like to thank you all for really this really rich discussions. It will be very difficult to do justice of all the important ideas and insights shared today, but I will try in our summary of this event to capture the main element of how you look at the future of South-South cooperation in dealing with sustainable development goals. I think this is really important, as was highlighted by so many participants and so many interveners, that we have to coordinate our actions in order to be effective and in order to be impactful and in order to reach those who are the most in need. So I'd like once again to thank all the panelists for really rich discussion and insightful presentations, all the participants for their presence, but also for active participation. And also I'd like to express my special thanks to our partners, the Islamic Development Bank and the South Centre. But at the same time, I would like to assure, but now that you have congratulated Jorge for his really rich career at the UN. At the same time, I would like, on behalf of the United Nations Office for South-South Cooperation, to assure you that we will continue this fight. We'll continue our commitment to engage you all in a very inclusive manner, because we want all the actors and all stakeholders of South-South and triangular cooperation to be part of this endeavor, collective endeavor, in order to support those who are, and to leave no one behind. I think this is really important, that we put this at the heart of all the activities and all the strategies that will be putting together for the future. And once again, I'd like to thank you very much, and I hope to engage with you all. And please don't hesitate to get in touch with the office or the colleagues of the office if you have any ideas that you think that we can put forward together. And I look forward to seeing you all very soon. Thank you very much, and the meeting is adjourned.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.